A lot of people hate the term anti-aging, and I get it. It kind of puts this whole negative vibe, right, around aging, something that we're all very lucky to do. You know, I don't think anyone is truly against aging, but the fear of aging has created like this whole industry of like cosmeceuticals and like, I don't know what the word is, and injections to basically help us not look like we're aging. And I think you can age however the fuck you want, right? I think like, yes, it's a privilege to age, but I also think you can't tell people how to age. I think the term aging gracefully is disgusting. It's annoying. I think it's very old fashioned. I think everyone should be able to age however they want. Botox, for example, has been like a staple for like years and years and years now, right, in the aesthetics world. It was approved by the FDA for cosmetic use back in 2002. And as we know, Botox is used to kind of treat those fine lines, wrinkles. It literally paralyzes your muscles to stop them moving, creating further lines, wrinkles, and it just helps even everything out. But Botox has been used for a number of other kind of like life-changing medical uses too. And despite what a handful of people think, Botox is a well-studied, regularly used toxin that when injected in small doses is perfectly safe. I've had people comment before that they think I'm like pushing Botox. I'm not. I'm just saying just don't listen to the people who are against it or say you shouldn't have it. Do whatever the fuck you want, but do it safely. Yet some people who still want that look of no wrinkles, no fine lines, that anti-aging look, still refuse to get Botox again, which is perfectly fine, obviously. But some opt for more interesting natural ways. Natural? To get the same result. But riddle me this, would you rather, honestly, have Botox and risk the very extremely rare and minimal risk complication, or would you rather not smile for 40 years? Come on, like, be honest. And that's what the subject of today's video did. I feel a little bit weird talking about this because I actually know the person in this story, not personally, but kind of like one separation of knowing. But I'm sharing this because I think this story is fascinating. Meet Tess Christian. She is now 58, but at the time of this picture, she was 50 years old. She spent the last 40 years not smiling as a natural alternative to Botox. Let's be real, she looks amazing. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not be like, oh, it wasn't worth it. She looks great. And you may be thinking that is extreme. 40 years of not smiling, literally showing barely any emotion, any joyous emotion, just to not look older? A life void of laughing. But Tess herself actually says she doesn't lack personality. She still has a good time with the gals, out on the town. She just chose not to smile because she doesn't want wrinkles. She actually had a chat with the Daily Mail, a great source, where Tess says, I don't have wrinkles because I've trained myself to control my facial muscles. She says that everybody actually always asks her if she has had Botox. And she says, no, I just haven't laughed or smiled since I was a teenager. That's crazy. She says her dedication though has more than paid off and she hasn't got a single line or wrinkle on her face, which we'll talk about in a bit. And she's thinking what we're all thinking. This is a lot to go through just for no wrinkles. And she knows herself that this is pure vanity. She's under no illusion that she is not vain in any way. She says, yes, it's vanity, but her strategy is more natural than Botox and more effective than any expensive beauty cream or facial, which I guess is technically true. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Tess also says that she's not miserable. I think to look at the pictures of her, she looks like she's just not having a good time. She looks like she's never gonna have a good time. And there have been some psychologists that say actually smiling is great for your body. Like you have to smile to literally let your body know that you are happy, let your mind know that you are happy. And in fact, doing the opposite, not smiling, can have some side effects, meaning your body might think you're actually miserable because you're not smiling. But Tess says that she's not miserable, she just doesn't feel the need to show that she's loving life by walking around grinning, which I don't think anybody does. Like, you can laugh here and there, but she does actually have a deeper reason for doing this. Yes, it's pure vanity, but where did this vanity stem from? Or where did this reasoning stem from? She actually attended a super strict Catholic school when she was much younger, and she said the nuns who worked there would hate when kids smiled, which is kind of weird. Like, I don't know. I always get like evil vibes from nuns. I know that's bad to say, but I always get a little bit like, so she kind of trained herself to, instead of like grinning ear to ear, she pretty much trained herself to smirk without really moving her face. So instead of laughing at anything or like, you know, naturally smiling, she just had this very silent hidden smirk. And as she got older, she kind of looked to like all the, you know, glamorous Hollywood actresses of the time and how they posed, and how a few in particular never really smiled. They just kind of like did all their emoting with their eyes, they stand to the side and be like, not like that. The reason I know of this story is because I used to work with her daughter. We actually worked in TK Maxx together, and I can't remember how this story came up, but on my lunch break, I would always read those like Love It magazines that were filled with like crazy stories. Like I ate my mum in a lasagna was the weirdest one I ever read. And I can't remember if I made this up in my head, but I feel like I was reading those stories and her daughter Stevie, who I worked with, was like, oh, my mum was in one of those magazines or something like that. But there's a particular bit in this article where her mum says, where Tess says that she didn't even smile when she gave birth to her daughter Stevie, which I didn't really believe at first, but when you think about it, if you spent the best part of your life teaching your muscles not to do something by physically not letting them, it must be more natural to you not to smile than to be overcome with emotion and raise your cheeks. Tess said she didn't even smile at her wedding, which, I know, fair enough. And of course, the comments in this video were mean. It's the Daily Mail. You know who reads that. A lot of the comments saying how she latched onto vanity rather than living life, how her daughter must be void of all emotion because her mum never smiled at her. I bet her kids are miserable. As I mentioned, I worked with her daughter, and to this day, I remember her because she was probably one of the most friendliest, like joy-filled people that I actually worked with. But whenever she came in, everyone would just be happy. The day would go better. Like, you'd love to be on your lunch breaks with her. She was funny. She had such an amazing personality. So confident, self-assured. I remember thinking at the time, she was just really nice and cool and amazing with staff and customers. So no, her kids are fine. Her kids are actually fine. But yes, I admit this is a little bit weird. But Tess does actually say that her daughter Stevie, who at the time of this article was a film production assistant, she says that she has never been offended by her mum's lack of smile, like the refusal to smile, and actually says that her daughter Stevie is the complete opposite of her. She smiles all the time, and that her daughter knows that her lack of smiling doesn't mean that she is miserable, not enjoying being around her, doesn't love her, it's just who she is. However, not smiling or lacking facial expression doesn't mean that your face isn't gonna age. Yes, it's gonna help prevent a lot of fine lines. Parts of our face are naturally gonna sag, UV exposure can contribute to it, smoking, other things can contribute to the aging of the face. So part of me thinks like, was it worth it? In my opinion, no. She looks great, but also bear in mind that by the time she had dedicated to a life of not smiling, Botox wasn't around for cosmetics use. I believe it was used in medicine or whatever in the 70s, but it wasn't cleared for FDA approval for cosmetics until the early noughties. So she was already far into her expressionless life by this time. But this does make me think, like, would you rather do this, not smile for 40 years, or just get Botox and get that instant result? If you really are if you're that dedicated or that eager to not look a certain age at a certain age, why would you not just get Botox? Ignoring her story, because she'd already dedicated to it, as I said, but it does make me think. I did see other articles of women who are doing this, younger women. Kim Kardashian has supposedly stopped expressing so much, but I just feel like we have the things available to us now, if you want them, that have the same effect, but you could also live your life, Oh my god, do you know Brian Johnson? Not like personally, but have you heard of him? You might recognize him from this picture, actually. He makes not smiling for 40 years look super tame. So yeah, this picture of him was very popular for a reason, because they're both holding like blood and plasma in a tube, and they both have their tops off, and it's kind of weird. It's become pretty iconic because of what is going on in this picture. Brian Johnson has been known to the media for wanting to pretty much biohack his life. His quest to look young and become immortal has garnered so much media attention for good and bad reasons. No, mainly bad. This picture of Johnson represents the plasma and blood transfusion that took place in 2023, where his son, also pictured, basically donated blood and plasma to his dad, who then donated blood and plasma to his dad, in what they've been calling the first tri-generational blood transfusion. Of course it's the world's first, like who else is doing it? Who else thought, let's share blood between us generations? No one. That is not impressive. It's like I go and take a shit on an elephant, I'm like, it's the first human to shit on an elephant. Like, it's not impressive. So why was he doing this? Well, obviously in his quest to look younger and become immortal, he did this because, as with most misunderstandings understood scientific findings in the world of beauty and cosmetics, there was a study done on mice that showed a transfusion of blood from a younger mouse to an older mouse showed signs of age repairing, I believe was the term they used. A study from Rejuvenate Bio claimed that they had extended the lifespan of mice by 109% from this transfusion, whilst a study from Harvard, literally posted like a week after, reported that aging can, using new genetic methods, be driven forward and backwards at will. Again, studied in mice. So Bryan Johnson took this and ran with it. He was like, if I get blood and plasma from my son, I'm going to become young again. It's going to reverse my aging. But he kind of didn't read the fine print, really, because of how this works, because of what this does to the cells in our body, all sorts of different cells, to put it very, very simply. A lot of these cells can turn cancerous. And this is a huge roadblock in this anti-aging study that these scientists are doing in mice again. So yes, you can reverse some signs of aging, but you're gonna get cancer. This may not be the same in humans, but they've obviously not studied that enough yet. Also, the figure thrown out that these mice lived 109% longer is also extremely misleading. Two groups of mice. One lot of mice had these cell transfusions, right? Same age. The ones that had these cell transfusions only lived 10 weeks longer than the mice who didn't get the transfusion. And in fact, some of these mice who didn't get the transfusion outlived these mice. So it wasn't like it was anything crazy. It's not like they literally turned the clock back 10 years, it just prolonged their life by 10 weeks. And I'm telling you all this because a number of interesting tests, trials, drugs, whatever Bryan Johnson is doing, all these scientific biohacking things are all very much questionable, and scientists tend to be looking and laughing at him and his odd attempt to reverse aging in himself. Some of the weird things he's done: he takes over 100 supplements a day, he gets electroshock therapy to his penis. I don't know, I didn't look into that one. He eats dinner at 11 a.m, so all his daily meals are done by 11 a.m. And he calls all these efforts the blueprint, and he's one of a handful of people who are almost racing to crack reverse aging and bring it to the masses in the form of what he would, I guess, sell as a blueprint. And I want to say, I mean this in the nicest way, I don't think it's working. Take a look at this before and after of him. In my opinion, he doesn't look younger or young in general. He just looks different. He looks, I was gonna say healthier, but there's almost like a weird, almost claggy look to his skin, like he's like just a robot version of himself. And they keep putting like this weird makeup on him, like he needs to get a new makeup artist, but he doesn't look young. He just looks different. Sometimes I swear he's wearing a lace front as well, you know, like that hair doesn't look real. It's interesting, and I'm glad someone is giving it a go, right? I guess like hopefully one day maybe they will crack that and we could all live a little bit longer to see our great grandchildren, or why ever people want to live longer. See what iPhones look like in 50 years, I don't know. But yes, he looks like he's doing well. He looks like he works out, has changed his diet, and he looks fine. I don't think he looks younger. He probably feels younger because he's being healthy. Not sure taking 100+ supplements is healthy, but each to their own. He looks a little bit like Queen Elizabeth I, I'm not gonna lie. That's kind of what I'm getting from him. Anyway, that's it for today. It's a short one. I've been busy this week. I'm so sorry. If you know any crazy stories about anti-aging attempts, do let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to take a look at them. You can watch the whole When Beauty Turns Ugly playlist here. Some general light entertainment here, and I'll see you over there.